You've seen these pictures before, right? Iran, 1970s. There's girls in skirts, they're going to college, they got their hair did. They're usually posted by some Twitter midwit with a smug caption like, "Look how nice Iran was before the Islamic Revolution." What if I told you all those pictures are fake? That what you're actually seeing is the cover-up of a top-secret MI6 and CIA oil heist conducted in the 1950s. Let's get into it. Meet the Prince, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. Very important character in this story. He's just a kid right now, only 21 years old. The world is in a bit of a kerfuffle at this time. The disagreements with Small Mustache Man have escalated, and we're in the middle of sorting out those differences in an event known as World War II. Britain and the Soviets have decided that the Shah, or King of Iran, was a bit too friendly with Hitler, and it's making them kind of uncomfortable. This is the first war in which control of oil is a life or death situation, and they're not taking any chances. So they invade Iran, they force the king out, and they install his 21-year-old son on the throne. Young Mohammad Reza is now king. You have to picture him as a shaky, soft-spoken, unprepared kid. He's not ready for this job, and that's kind of the point. The Brits and the Soviets hang around until the late 1940s, and then one day, they leave. And what they leave behind is unstable. The Shah is considered weak by a large portion of the population. He's a caretaker who spent the last 5 years draining his country of their most valuable resource and shipping it off to foreign powers. In reaction to this, a pro-Iranian populist movement has been slowly building in the countryside. Iran is a top 10 oil-producing nation. They sit on some of the richest oil fields on Earth, generating billions of dollars a year. However, only a tiny sliver of that wealth ever stays in Iran. The Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, now known as BP, yes, that BP, owns most of the oil rights in Iran. BP negotiated this deal for a few $1 million in the early 1900s before anyone understood the true value of oil. The British even built and operate the world's largest refinery in Iran to process the vast quantities of oil being extracted. And now I need to introduce the next important character in this story, Mohammad Mossadegh. He's a lawyer turned politician, and he's running to be prime minister of Iran. Mossadegh has tapped into that populist movement and become their champion. He has a very simple platform: reduce the power of the monarchy and nationalize the oil wells. As he famously said, "Everyone's getting rich but us. We got all this oil and no swag. That oil belongs to Iran." His platform resonates, and he's elected prime minister by a huge majority. 3 days after being elected, he signs the bill to nationalize the oil production. With the stroke of a pen, Iran just took ownership of everything. And you can debate the morality of this. Like, in a sense, they are stealing what BP built over the last 50 years. But at the same time, Iran was being robbed. I don't think you have a moral obligation to honor a contract that is bleeding your country dry. The Shah's in a tough spot now. This populist movement is too big to ignore. But also, Britain is going to be pissed when they find out. He eventually approves the nationalization bill, and Mossadegh becomes a hero. BP is not happy.
Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm!
Their golden goose has just been ripped right out of their hands, and their stock is plummeting. The executives go to the government and ask for support. It turns out, the government is already freaking out because they own 50% of BP's stock. And I keep saying BP, just remember it's not actually called BP yet. It's still the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. The British argument boils down to this.
You're trying to kidnap what I've rightfully stolen.
They start negotiating with the Iranians. "All right, chaps, you made a real dog's dinner out of this. Just pay us fair market value, and Bob's your uncle. You can keep all the oil." Mossadegh is not interested. From his perspective, he just caught a burglar in his house, and now the guy's asking for Uber money to leave. Mossadegh hates the British. When an American diplomat visited Iran, Mossadegh had this to say about the British. "You do not know how crafty they are. You do not know how evil they are. You do not know how they sully everything they touch. You do not know them." Britain tries adding some pressure through embargoes and courts, but none of it's really working. Eventually, the British just give up. They want Mossadegh gone, but they need American backup for that kind of operation. The American ambassador goes to Truman and begs him to support the British plan in Iran. You can actually read the president's response in declassified CIA documents, and it's amazing.
Let me tell you something about the Iranian situation. We tried to get those blockheaded British to have their oil company make a fair deal with Iran. No, they can't do that. They know how to handle it, and we don't, apparently.
Truman won't bite, so the plan is dead in the water. 1953, Truman's gone. Eisenhower's in the White House now. Things in Iran have taken an interesting turn. With the British embargo in place, Iran is now drifting eastward. They're cutting trade deals with the Soviet Union and slowly moving into the communist orbit. The Cold War is in full swing at this point, so the British try again with a new sales pitch. Hey, Iran's getting pretty close to those Soviets, Sure would be a shame if all that oil went to communists instead of us, right? That'd be bad. Fuck it. Eisenhower greenlights the plan. It even gets a snappy new name, Operation Ajax. The heist is officially on. CIA agent Kermit Roosevelt, grandson of Teddy Roosevelt, lands in Tehran, July 1953. He's got a suitcase with $10 million in it and a mission: get rid of Mossadegh. Can we I have to cut in real quick. This is the coolest thing ever. Can you imagine? Your name is Kermit. Your grandfather is Teddy Roosevelt. You just landed in a foreign country with a bag full of money and the world's shortest to-do list. It's so sick. How is this not a movie? Kermit has a two-step plan. First, he's going to bribe everyone he can find. He hires a lieutenant colonel loyal to the Shah to be the face of the operation. He starts handing out gold watches and envelopes full of cash to politicians. He commissions articles in all the major newspapers calling Mossadegh a Soviet puppet. Kermit even starts paying off clerics to preach against the prime minister. He's handing out cash to mercenaries and prostitutes, butchers, students. Anyone willing to protest is getting paid. Step 2 is a bit more complicated. Kermit needs the Shah to go along with the coup. He meets with the Shah, but the plan is rejected. To the Shah, this just seems like more foreign meddling in his country, which it absolutely is. Kermit has a backup plan though. He sends some agents to visit the Shah's sister, who's now living in exile in Europe. And this next part is true, I promise. They bribe her with a mink coat and ask her to talk to her brother. She flies back to Iran and does her best to convince him, but the Shah rejects her as well. In the Hollywood version of the story, his sister is able to convince him. In reality, he agreed for some other vague, uninteresting reasons that I'm not going to talk about. So now, everything is in place. On August 15th, around midnight, the colonel and his forces roll up to Mossadegh's home. They're carrying papers signed by the Shah that replace Mossadegh as prime minister. Little do they know, there's been a leak. When they arrive, Mossadegh is waiting with his own loyal military forces, and he arrests the colonel. Mossadegh then goes onto Radio Tehran and announces the failed coup attempt. He also tells everyone that the Shah was involved in trying to remove him. Riots break out in Tehran. People are toppling statues of the king, burning down buildings, marching in the streets. The Shah realizes his life is in danger and he flees to Rome. The plan failed. The colonel's in jail, the king is in Rome, Mossadegh is in power. It's over.
Basically, they decided this is a done deal. We need to pull our forces out of there. And so they instruct Kermit Roosevelt to wrap it all up and get out of there.
The show goes on!
Kermit and his MI6 counterparts have one more trick up their sleeve: escalation. They come up with a spin. It wasn't a coup by the Shah that was thwarted. It was actually a coup by Mossadegh against the Shah. On the 19th of August, Kermit assembles a huge pro-Shah crowd in the streets of Tehran. It's a mix of genuine grassroots supporters and agents paid off by the CIA. Street fighting breaks out between the Mossadegh forces and the Shah protesters. The mob is getting violent, just as Kermit hoped it would. As the tension builds, the Shah supporters are now burning down buildings and marching to Mossadegh's home, which is ringed with tanks and Iranian military forces. From the declassified CIA files, the size and fervor of the demonstrations were critical in encouraging the military to come down on the side of the Shah. The Iranian military has a long tradition of waiting to see who controls the streets before it acts. Eventually, the military flips. They end up siding with the pro-Shah forces, and Mossadegh is arrested. The rebels seize control of Radio Tehran and start broadcasting that the Shah is now back in power. The Shah returns to Iran on the 22nd of August, and now it's time to negotiate the deal. BP doesn't get everything this time, only 40%. American firms like Standard Oil take another 40%. Iran is promised a 50-50 split of all the profits going forward. After the deal is done, the British lift the embargo, and oil production goes to new record high levels. The Shah is back on the throne, but it's on rent from the West. He's been their project since he was a kid in 1941, and now, post-coup, he's in their pocket again. When the Shah returned to power, he significantly reduced the strength of parliament, concentrating all authority in the crown. Having said that, the Shah was considered to be pretty liberal, at least by Iranian standards. He was educated in a Swiss boarding school and was apparently obsessed with French culture. He always wanted to steer his country to be more Western, and this was his chance. The 1950s are a bit sketchy. He's dodging assassination attempts and relies heavily on his US advisors to stay in power. By the 1960s, things have stabilized a bit, and the Shah is ready to make his mark. The Shah implements a program called the White Revolution. He's breaking up old estates and distributing the land. Colleges are open for women, and they're given the right to vote. He even bans veils in most public places. He's modernizing and liberalizing the country. It's ambitious, and it's all funded by oil money. By the late 1960s, Iran is making $20 billion a year off their oil deal with the West. The Shah is obsessed with image, and Tehran becomes his showcase. He's selling a vision. Iran is the shiny, enlightened Western outpost in the Middle East. He's really writing the playbook that Dubai would adopt 30 years later. Those 1970s pictures are capturing his exhibit to the world. It's a finely crafted facsimile of a Western city. It's like a movie set built out of infinite oil money. And just like a movie set, it's not real. If you step outside of Tehran, it's a very different story. 80% of the country lives in poverty, ignored by the king. Villages have no roads, no doctors. All that oil money stays in the capital. The Shah's secret police, the Savak, keep the populist movement in line. We're talking tens of thousands of people being arrested and tortured. Beatings, electric shocks, fingernails are ripped out. It's horrific. And it's all to prop up this fragile outpost of Western values in the heart of a Shia Muslim country. The elite in Tehran exist as Western propaganda, while most Iranians feel like strangers in their own country. By 1978, the facade is falling apart. The oil boom is fading, inflation is rampant, and jobs are drying up. The Shah's Western push to ban veils and implement secular laws are seen as a betrayal by most of Iran. And now I need to introduce the final important character in this story, Ayatollah Khomeini. He's a populist religious figure who was actually exiled by the Shah in the 1960s. Khomeini is about to light the match that will burn down this Western oil province. From exile in France, Khomeini starts recording cassettes. He's a religious figure, that's what Ayatollah means. But these recordings are a mix of sermon and anti-Shah, pro-populist political speeches. These tapes are smuggled into Iran and distributed like a pre-internet viral meme. As anti-Shah protests break out in Tehran, Khomeini and the Shah start a media proxy war with each other.
If you succeed in removing the Shah, what sort of government do you wish to replace him? Do you want an Islamic state?
یک حکومت جمهوری اسلامی اما جمهوری برای اینکه به آراء اکثریت مردم ملت متکی است و اما اسلامی برای اینکه قانون اساسیش عبارت از قانون اسلام است.
This is the very familiar what we call unholy alliance between the black and the red. That is the communists and the very reactionary people or strata. We always see it because they are both against the progress and the happiness of this country.
Khomeini's platform is significantly more aggressive than Mossadegh's from 25 years earlier. There is no reduce the power of the monarchy rhetoric anymore. Khomeini calls the Shah a traitor and a puppet of the West. He's forcing these Western ideals on the population, and he's using his secret police to terrify anyone who objects. Iran must return to Islam. This is the will of the people. Turns out, he was right. On December 10th, 1978, 9 million people take to the streets to protest against the Shah. That's 25% of the population in the streets on a single day. Chants of "death to the Shah" are reported by the US Embassy. Secret police and military forces fire on the crowd, killing scores of people. Over the following weeks, protests are almost constant. There's another big surge on December 29th, where over 1 million people are rioting in Tehran. By January 16th, it's over for the Shah. He and his wife flee the country, the palace is looted, and the statues of the Shah are destroyed. 2 weeks after the Shah flees, Khomeini arrives. He's greeted by 5 million people in the streets of Tehran. Just a few months ago, this guy was living in a small French village, recording tapes with a handful of supporters. Now he's standing in Iran. 5 million people are chanting his name, and he's the de facto leader of a nation. That is a staggering change in fortune. In March, they hold a vote. Islamic Republic, yes or no? 98% vote yes. Back to the photos. Are they real? Well, they were real for a tiny sliver of Iran. Those pictures are capturing a very brief moment in time when the Western facade built out of oil money was at its zenith. But the entire liberal Iran fantasy was a byproduct of Western interference. In 1953, the CIA crushed the Iranian populist movement. For 25 years, they managed to hold on to control, until that same movement rose again and swallowed the entire country. The full story of CIA and MI6 involvement only came to light recently, but the people of Iran have known the whole time. They lived through it. They see the West as an evil superpower who installed a dictator in their country and tried to destroy their culture for 3 decades. They're kind of right.